This is MSI's Aegis X. It's basically their newest small form factor gaming PC. It's pretty incredible. It's a full desktop. It's kind of designed around VR and that sort of thing, but it has a GTX 1080 as well as a i7 6700K, and it's pretty incredible, so do stick around. So this is a pretty awesome, very small gaming PC that comes with this HDMI to HDMI cable, and that's for the VR Link HDMI port on the front, which basically allows you to plug in your VR headset in the front as opposed to in the back to give you a little bit of extra, cable length. You also have two more USB Type 3.1 ports as well as Type C and a power button, headphone, microphone jacks, and you also have this MSI OC button which allows you to press it and it automatically overclocks the CPU and the GPU, which actually is really nice, works very well. You also have a carrying handle on the back at the top, which looks awesome, and I actually really do like the look of this thing. It's a very kind of unique design. In terms of the actual sizing, it's about 433mm by 169 by 367, so it's a 19.6 litre chassis, otherwise known as very small. You also have a 600 watt power supply on the bottom, which is kind of like a server type one. It's quite cool anyway, and you have the full I/O on the back. That VR Link HDMI port, by the way, needs that cable plugged in to work. You also have Wi-Fi built in, which is always quite nice to see. In terms of the actual specs, as I said, it's a 6700K, a GTX 1080, it's the Armor 8G version, 16 gigs of 2133 DDR4 RAM, and two 128GB SSDs in RAID 0 for nice fast operation. You also have a 2TB hard drive and a rather cool, very small closed loop water cooler. I think that's like an 80mm radiator, which is obviously very nice, and it also looks like you have a lot of space for expandability. So obviously you have that DVD drive on the top, but you also have a space for a 2.5-inch drive and what looks like 1 to 2 more 3.5-inch drives as well, which is pretty awesome. And obviously you can upgrade the RAM and SSDs if you so wanted to, and also the heatsink, you get some sort of heatsink type goop on the side panel for that SSD in the back, which is always nice to see. Obviously the RGB lighting is definitely one of the kind of key points of 2016 apparently, but you do have the Mystic lights on the front, which does actually look quite cool, and yeah, it's a very capable PC. In terms of actual gaming numbers, it's got a GTX 1080 and a 6700K, so they are pretty much the highest end performing components at the moment. So as you can tell, it does very well. It's obviously very much suited to 4K/VR gaming, and it's perfectly, I hate to use the word, but quote-unquote future-proof, because when the headsets do get a little bit of a higher resolution per eye, this is still going to be able to keep up just fine. So if you want a really awesome PC, especially one that you could take to LANs very easily, it's also quite secure in the side panel system, so you can't just easily take the side panels off. Basically, it's awesome. It's a really cool PC, and this is definitely something you should check out. In terms of temperatures, it is quite hot. It was about 80 degrees C on the CPU and about 80 degrees on the GPU, and it does get quite loud as well. So there are a few trade-offs to the size. So this is a pretty incredible little box, especially for how much hardware you fit in and how much standard hardware you can fit in as well. I've actually got a review of the MSI Vortex coming out on Monday, so do stick around for that. And obviously it's a very awesome, another small form factor type PC with a lot of power in it, but this one is pretty incredible, especially because it features a GTX 1080. It's the Armor 8G model, which actually in terms of temperatures, it was running about 83 degrees, which I believe is the target temperature. It was a fairly hot ambient room, but nonetheless, it was still running quite hot, as was the 6700K inside as well. I was about 80 degrees too, but yeah, nonetheless, it's a really awesome little box, especially obviously you've got the 1080, you've got 6700K, you've got 16 gigs of RAM, you have 256GB M.2 SSDs, 128GB SSDs in RAID, and a 2TB hard drive, and it looks like there's space for another 2.5-inch drive up the top, and at least I think 2 more standard 3.25-inch or 3.5-inch drives as well. So that's just, it's an incredible form factor. My main sort of cons with it are that you do pay a bit of a premium for having something this size. It's not as massive as, for example, the Acer desktop I took a look at not too long ago, where it was basically about £1,000 for parts and they were selling it for £2,000. This is also selling for about £2,000, but it's about £1,500 to £1,700 worth of parts. So you still do pay a premium for having a very small form factor, but nonetheless it's still really awesome. and actually looks really cool too. One of the cool things that you could upgrade it in the future as well with different graphics cards, it is a full size, it's the Armor 8G graphics card, so you can easily take that out and switch it out for something, you know, 1080 Ti or whatever in the future. It does have two 8-pin PCIe power connectors in there as well, and as I said, it does look like you could possibly upgrade both the RAM, SSDs, hard drive capacity, and actually pretty much everything, so that's really pretty awesome. In terms of scoring, it's going to be, I think, a 4 for 5 money. It definitely has to be a 5 for performance. In terms of functionality, despite the temperatures being really high and it being quite loud, especially on full blast when playing games, it is still a very functional little box. I actually really like the overclocking button on the front as well, so that's quite cool. And that's going to be a 5. It's going to get a 5 for stealth, it has to, and TechteamGB score is going to be a 5 as well. It's going to get the gold award because it really is an awesome little box. It's just incredible the amount of power you get from it. Obviously the VR link is also quite cool. So if you want to sit, you know, just sit on your desk and play VR games with the you know, HDMI cable coming out the front, then you can do. And yeah, it's an awesome little box. And if you're planning on having, well, a ridiculously cool PC, then check one of these out. There'll be a link in the description down below. So I guess that's kind of that. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, I guess that's that. Check out our Facebook and Twitter if you're interested. Also check out our Amazon affiliate links. It genuinely helps me keep these videos running, lights on and the rent paid. So if you can do that, that would be awesome when you're buying anything on Amazon. And yeah, I guess that's that. Don't forget to subscribe, like or dislike depending on what you thought. And we'll see you on the next video.